All right, we'll be getting started. So thank you everyone for joining. And of course, a special welcome to Andy Swann here with me today. So first of all, this is the first part of our webinar series at European Leadership University, where we'll monthly speak with experts in the field of AI, data science, but also people who are working in education and innovation more at large. So I hope you also tune in for future sessions as well. Today, let me quickly introduce Andy. So Andy, among many things, he is the author of the book, The Human Workplace. He's also the founder of My Amazing Team and Better Simple Human. But next to that, he's also a catalyst, speaker, a training facilitator. So he brings a lot of experience with him today, and we're very excited to have you. He also brings some of the world's biggest brands together to think about how to innovate and create great teams in this new digital age and think about the future of the workplace. So these are some of the things we will be speaking about today. Of course, the topic of our webinar today is how to stand out in the age of AI, both as an organization, as a team, and also as an early professional employee especially. So what we will be doing is having a session of around 30 minutes to half an hour. First, I'll be asking some guiding questions to Andy, but you're also welcome to drop your questions using the Q&A button in the back of Zoom, in the bottom of Zoom, and we'll definitely also do our best to answer all of your questions from the audience. So Andy, welcome again. We're very excited to have you. So first off, you are the founder of a company called My Amazing Team. So perhaps we can start off by talking a bit about how we can actually create amazing and successful teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting, to take this idea, and particularly the audience you guys have there, of this idea of data science and standing out in the age of AI. And that's exactly what my business does, as well as we have to do as individuals to kind of create amazing teams in organizations. The future of work and the future of organizations is very different to the history of work and the history of industry. So today, it's not just about creating a product or service and kind of putting it in front of people until they just accept it. Today, the word connection is everything, really. Whether you're creating products or services for your customers, who is the best people to tell you what they want from the products and services you offer, but the people who are going to use those products and services. So actually, you need to connect with your customers to be able to provide what they need from your organization, because people have choice as well. The digital world gives us choice. So if they don't connect with your brand or your company, they can go elsewhere. And I think increasingly we're seeing that around how we create organizations and how we create teams within organizations as well. It's the echoing of that. How do you create an amazing team who does amazing work together? They need to connect with the mission you're undertaking. They need to connect with each other. They need to have that opportunity to collaborate and to own what they're doing. So you're very much seeing this mirror almost of what's happening outside an organization to create products and services people need, to what's happening inside an organization to create the platform for people to do their best work. And of course, there's a big overlap as well, because at the same time, we can be customers and employees of an organization. We can enjoy a brand from afar and not work for it, but 10 years down the line, maybe we might work for that company. But at all different times, we have these different interactions with business and organizations. So you kind of see this shift to community. Every organization and every brand is building a community of people, and the intensity of their participation with that community is almost, it's whether they're on the field, on the playing field as part of the team, or whether they're in the stadium as a supporter, or whether they're watching in a bar 100 miles away. They're still connected to that organization in some way. They're still part of that team almost, whether or not they're playing on the playing field or they're a supporter. I think that's the big blueprint of it all, and that's what I do in my business. But that's what you see increasingly. That's what we help major organizations understand: this kind of community building and this element of connection, and this enabling of people to have conversations and to enable creativity and innovation. And it's exactly the same thing whether you're providing products and services, whether you're providing a platform for your employees, or equally whether you're kind of selling yourself into an organization as a potential employee. It's that same ethos. How do I connect with the organization? How do I help them see that I am the person to come in and help move things forward here?
Great. So you're talking both about ways to externally connect from outside an organization with an organization, but also internally within an organization. Could you maybe give an example of a company or an organization that has innovated very well, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, there are some great examples. It's really easy to use startups as examples because there's less people there. They're small. Everybody's involved in the same mission, and it's easy to bind people together, and they can achieve things very, very quickly. But what I really like to focus on all the time, and particularly as we think about data and how you kind of access data and information to make decisions and start to build, we talk about the age of AI. How can you take that data and know which data you need to concentrate on and how to utilize that to move things forward? And I like to focus on big, complex organizations because these are the organizations that have so much data and so much insight. However, they also have so much structure that often stops the insight and data being shared to the right places to enable decision making. So, I mean, there are some obvious famous examples of innovation and disruption. You have the traditional things where people say, oh, Netflix disrupted the video consumption industry with streaming, and look at Blockbuster now, and Blockbuster died, and things like that. And that's kind of easy to see kind of these disruptive startups. But what's really interesting is some of the biggest innovations are happening all the time, but they're not in areas of public focus. A 2% efficiency saving on a process within a major organization or even a smaller organization won't be reported to the media. However, it will make a huge impact to the teams who are working in that organization, to the profitability of the organization, to the success of its whole community. So I think those kind of examples are great. And I'm just trying to think of some off the top of my head that I'm actually allowed to share that I know that we've worked in. Because sometimes these things, they get kind of quite confidential when they're not these big public. You have this new innovation in a great new aircraft. However, there's an issue with the software. Now, this is very public, and there's been a couple of issues which, tragically have ended in some really bad circumstances. However, now there's that understanding that we need to iterate the software, and the software is being fixed in order to fix the problem. And it's a very public way of showing this kind of innovation process and how innovation happens in this kind of iterative way. It's understanding we need to build a new product and service based on what people want. However, when you test it in the real world, if it goes wrong, you don't just scrap those planes. You iterate, you find out where the problem is, you improve it, and you make sure that problem doesn't happen again. So you try and you learn from failure, and you learn from the data that you gather in order to build the right experience. So, I mean, that's kind of a slightly unfortunate example, but there are some great examples of big organizations doing things at the moment and doing things very quietly. So, for example, today I manage most of my entire company. We have offices in the US. We also have an office in London, and we do projects all over the world. And we keep our whole team together using Microsoft Teams. Now, essentially, even 2 years ago, we may have been having conversations using Slack, which would enable us all to speak to each other. We might have been using, OneDrive or Dropbox or something for holding files, but then we would have been attaching things to emails. We would have been using Microsoft Word or other programs over here. And what you're seeing now is all of this stuff kind of coming together into one place. So I go into Teams in the morning, I access all my files there, I edit them from there, I open them, they automatically save back to OneDrive, which is still there behind the scenes, but it's putting this layer of user interface and user experience over the top, which means that I have all of the applications I need, including Skype and all of these kind of services that have been procured over the years, in one really easy to use place. And it's innovation that's so incremental, you don't see it happening. It's almost these different applications you were using just kind of coming together under this interface that now all of a sudden I go to one icon on my desktop in the morning and I can manage my entire company, and I can speak to people all around the world, and I can collaborate with clients, and we can develop ideas, and we can keep track of projects, and we can call people, we can do video chat, and it's all for one place. And that's a really great example of this kind of incremental innovation. It doesn't have to be a huge disruptive change. It can actually be an understanding of what do our users want. And I use that, I use that from a business perspective, understanding what customers need, through to you trying to get into a business or an employer as an individual. What do these people want or need from me? How can I provide that to them? But then what's that interaction point? What's the user experience or the user interface that goes over that to make it attractive to them, or to make it kind of feel natural? so much so that when it's done right, you don't even see it coming. It's not crazy disruptive or a big impact or a big change in the way you're doing things. It just kind of gradually and feels natural, and that becomes the way you adopt things. So I think in terms of innovation, those subtle examples that are the most exciting. Those kind of changes. I mean, all of us use different products every day, and whether it's the technology we use, we all know about incremental innovation from every time our phones update or we update an app. That's the next step based on user feedback of what that app has to deliver. Technology changes, but actual physical products as well are innovating. I mean, yeah, again, in the news recently, you've seen the Nike trainers that are self-lacing based on an app. And actually, interestingly, people are questioning, do I want to be lacing my sneakers or tightening my sneakers via an app? Can I just put them on and go? And so you kind of have this tug with any innovation of people saying, yes, it's progress, and other people saying, is it really necessary? And other people saying, yes, it's changing my life. And to go back to what we said at the very start around community and understanding who you're connecting with, actually, that's where you have to understand if you're innovating. Initially, with the adoption curve, there will be certain people that your product connects with, and not every product will become a mainstream product, but it will connect with a group. And as long as you've gathered that insight and you know who your community is, you know the size of the community, you know where they are, you know how to connect with them, how to communicate with them, what language to use, and more importantly, what they want, because you can have a two-way conversation for them to tell you. And that's the basis of this kind of innovation, particularly through data.
Yeah, so interestingly, perhaps the way to stand out for organizations is to not really stand out all that much and make the innovation so that my life becomes easier, but I don't even notice it.
Now, I think that's kind of important. Sorry, I'll just pick up on this one. So stand out, but not stand out that much in terms of as you're developing and delivering products and services. Don't disrupt people and make things inconvenient. Make things easy for them. But actually, in terms of you as an organization and what you stand for, and what you offer, make sure that stands out. Make sure people understand when they engage with you, how you're different. Why should they come and talk to you instead of talk to somebody else who does something exactly the same? What's the difference here? What's your, and I don't like to use the word values so much, but what's your behaviors? What do you really stand for? What's your mission that they can align with that means the two of you should work together? And that's where you should be standing out. And then the things that you provide should be so seamless and easy that they get adopted by your customers.
Mm-hmm. Great. I also want to remind everyone that if you do have questions for Andy, you're free to drop them using the Q&A button in the bottom of Zoom. So we'll definitely address them as well. So other than organizations, we're here joined by a lot of people who are a couple of years or maybe up to 10 years into their career. And some people may have an anxiety about our automated world and everything is becoming digitalized. So what does that mean for me as a human employee, right? So how can we, as individuals, innovate ourselves?
Absolutely. I think this is a really huge topic of conversation, and it's, we could talk all day on the kind of automation of the workplace. I think to kind of cut it down, automation is coming. Technology will continue to develop, and there's nothing we can do about that. Now, it will mean that from a society perspective, there are decisions that have to be made around how wealth is distributed, how we deal with the fact that not everybody may have to work, or that jobs are changing and roles are changing. So I think that's probably a topic for another day. However, in terms of kind of individual impacts, if you're doing something you believe in, you will find a niche. There will be a need for it. And it goes back to understanding what we said before, how companies operate, how they connect with their customers. Actually, you as a provider of yourself as an employee, how do you connect with the companies you can work with? What's the demand for what you do? Now, it may be that in the future, certain positions may be automated and not required in the workplace anymore, but that may allow you to then go and pursue kind of the craft positions and specialized things that you may have done as free time things previously. I mean, we're already seeing like the rise of craft brewing of beer and spirits across the world in the last 10 years. That's an example of how people are taking previous hobbies that they couldn't make money from and starting to make money from because of this craftsmanship. And you have this level of human touch and the level of kind of human branding. And they're micro brands as well. You have these small companies that aren't trying to sell to the entire world. They're just connecting with specific interest communities. And I think it's behaving like that as ourselves and understanding, okay, who am I connecting with? Where's the niche for what I want to provide? And also understanding how we want to work. You know, do I want to go and work for a specific company with a traditional career path where I'll go in and I'll work within that company, then I'll leave? Or do I want to go on a short-term basis to a series of different projects or the same projects with different companies? You know, do I see myself in a job that I develop in for the next 20 years? Or actually, you know, I have this set of skills. Will I go in with an open mind for 2 years and then see where my interests take me next? And I think what's really interesting in the rise of automation and the rise of technology, it not only allows us to start taking responsibility for these choices. And I mean, I think responsibility is a big word. If we just sit and wait for things to happen to us in a traditional kind of way, then the world of work will leave us behind. But if we take responsibility, we can find our own opportunities. But also we have from the data and the connectivity globally, this opportunity to choose where we work and to really go out and find our communities. You know, we don't need to be sitting in the same town as our ideal job necessarily, because we can work in different ways now, particularly in digital jobs. And equally, you know, we can find a niche for craft positions that previously weren't employment. So we need to really rethink our entire approach to work as individuals, but to get on the radar of employers, actually, we need to do it on our terms. We need to work out, who do we want to work for? Will they be clients of ours? Will they employ us directly? What do we want from our world of work? And then we need to see ourselves as these brands almost that we take to those employers. And we have that wealth of data to really understand all that. You know, we understand the employers. We don't just go to them because they're the closest company to our house. Actually, we can do that alignment with the mission they have, the work they do, the way they approach their work, and all of these different factors. And I think it's really interesting that maybe, although the world of work is starting to automate, we haven't all yet adapted our mindsets as potential applicants. I mean, to use an example, I've been advertising a couple of positions within our company recently, and we do a really creative job description. And in the job description, it says, don't just send us a generic job application with a covering letter. You know, find out a bit about us and put yourselves on the map in front of us. But actually, you know, 90% of the applications we get are still just people pressing the apply button, uploading a pre-written covering letter. And that doesn't excite us. However, if people really understand and use the data that's out there in the world to go, okay, I know who this company is, I know why I want to work with it, I'm aligned with it in this way, here's how I can get on their radar, then actually that's a way of kind of promoting your brand and that alignment and taking things forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we do have some questions coming in from the audience members as well. One is from Margot, who's joining us from Amsterdam. She is asking, the offsite working, let's say remote working, what you just talked about, started a while ago. Do you think this will really develop further, or will we see a counter movement?
I think probably we're already seeing the counter movement. I mean, you know, a couple of years ago now, big companies like Yahoo, who allow everyone to work remotely, suddenly said, you know what, we need you back in the same place. And I think depending on how an organization sets itself up, it depends how well remote working works. So there are certain types of jobs that have to be in a workplace. You can't run a manufacturing machine that requires people or supervision at the moment without the people being in the location. So when we talk about remote working, it's generally office positions or service positions. So can we work remotely? Yes. Are we able to do our best work remotely? Sometimes. Do we need a variety of spaces to do our best work? Absolutely. And sometimes is the best place to do that work when you need to be in a room or collaborate closely with your team or have that big connection to the brand that you work for, is that in a specific workplace? Absolutely. So what I think we're going to see, and it's already starting to happen, is the rethinking of workplace design away from a place you have to come to between 9 to 5 p.m. or 8 hours a day into almost a clubhouse where you are a member of this clubhouse, and in that clubhouse is the set of tools and facilities that you really need to play your fullest part of that club. And when you're not in the club, you're still attached to the club, you can still communicate with it, but sometimes you really get value from going to that clubhouse and being connected in that way. And I think that's the shift in mindset. So it's that difference. And every organization needs to work it out from themselves. There's no blueprint to say this works better for this organization or that. So for example, Buffer, the social media scheduling tool, they run an entire remote workforce around the world. And they have certain times of the year where they all go to a location and get together and do some team building. But on a day-to-day basis, they run their entire global workforce without any physical office locations. However, there are other major organizations. The rise of WeWork providing locations for businesses shows you that locations aren't dead. Places for people to go and communicate and collaborate are just as important now as they ever have been, but it depends who your organization is and what they want to get from their work and how they bring people together and how they structure that. Right through to these amazing kind of campus. You see Google are building a new campus in London. Apple has just built its new campus in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. And they're building these very expensive, highly invested places, these clubhouses, to bring people together. So there's the whole spectrum, and it depends what your organization needs and also what its people need to do their best day's work. Do they need somewhere to be, or do they need a set of tools to work remotely? And I think that's up to the collectives of organizations to really decide.
Great. So one thing that I want to return a bit to is the idea of community. And when you're part of a community, of course, we've been talking about like the needs that I may have as an employee, but also as an organization. But when you're part of a community, you're also accountable or responsible to this group. So how do you think that comes into play when I might have needs or wishes, interests as an employee, such as remote work, but I also have an accountability to my community?
Absolutely. I think this is a really important shift from old work to new work. Previously you had to be in a location at a certain time. Even if you weren't productive, you were measured on being present. It doesn't mean you worked for 8 hours a day. It just meant you were in a location. And while you were there, you would have a manager who says, you must do this, this, and this, and this is what is expected of you. You must make 10 phone calls, but and people would tick them off. So it's kind of management by numbers, we call it. And how now you're seeing this kind of, and every year you go on your manual handling training course or your mandatory training courses, and you do your annual appraisal, and it would say every year, here's a conversation because we have to do it. Here's some areas you can develop, and then the paper will go in the file for a year. But now you're seeing this shift to, okay, we're going to give you a platform to do your best work. Yes, you could come into the office, and when you're here, it's got great facilities. However, we'll give you the tools you need to work wherever you need to be to do your best work. However, as a trade-off for that, you have to take responsibility for your work. We're not going to take responsibility for making sure you're here for this amount of time and doing these things. You need to take responsibility for that flow of work, for achieving what you need to achieve to get your work done. And equally, that handover of your personal development. Okay, we're not going to sit there and just give you training courses that might not work for you because you're an individual. We recognize that, but it's now your responsibility to tell us what you need as an individual to develop and to be able to do your job to the best possible level. But also, we want to work with you to help you achieve your aims. So, for example, with my company, the first question we ask people when they come to interview with us is, what do you want to achieve? And then we work out how can we amalgamate their personal goals into our business goals and then create a development plan for them. And it's that shift of kind of having to be somewhere and being managed to actually leadership and being given personal responsibility. The thing is, when you're given personal responsibility for your own work, you have to take responsibility for it. You are accountable for it. And that's the shift. It's a trade-off. And there are people who suffer from that kind of lack of structure or aren't comfortable with taking that initiative. And that in itself is a developmental thing. But I think that's increasingly the way we're seeing the world of work develop.
Great. So with a few minutes left, I want to open it up to the audience, and we do have some other questions coming in. So first of all, there is one that speaks a bit to, I think, when we were talking about data and what the wealth of data can do. Mani is asking, how do you see the future of data science? What if AI can do everything by itself and we do not need data science, or we do not need, let's say, human employees to feed the data? Like, do you think this is a possibility?
I think yes and no to all of the above. I think so. I think humans remain extraordinarily important. So to start with data, I think data is very important. When you talk about connecting with your customers, particularly when you're talking about big global brands, and data is really important. Not only what data you're gathering, but the quality of that data and making sure you access the right data to inform your decisions, and then how you utilize that data to drive the decisions that you make as a business, not only to do the work. I mean, for example, I'm staring at the wall behind me right now. We're in the process for a project we're doing of mapping consumer behavior from a range of different factors. And it's a hugely complex kind of map of things. And you have these algorithms that say, if this happens, or if this factor comes into play, then here's an outcome, and then that moves the outcomes down there. And I think that's really important, because that enables brands to be able to say, okay, we understand our audience. We know that this is our general audience, but if they're in this condition, or if this factor comes into play, this changes their behavior. That's extraordinarily important. So the access to quality data and how you use that will only help organizations to serve humans better. So if Microsoft, for example, Microsoft in their offices have a range of technology. However, they're not using that technology to control people at work. They're using that technology to understand what people need to give them a better day at work, to allow them to achieve what they need to achieve as humans. And we have these things that at the moment, maybe down the line, we'll get to the point where artificial intelligence can do creativity, can do human empathy. However, we still need people to create the artificial intelligence. There still needs to be a human connection at the front of brands. Even if you have, if you have, let's say, machines manufacturing your goods for you, which is far preferable to having people working in sweatshops in Southeast Asia in awful conditions. You still need that personal, those goods still have to be sold. So the connection that sells those goods is going to be personal. And I know there's an ad agency, I think in Japan, who have built a robotic creative director. And that's a great gimmick, but people still need to have a relationship with people. They buy and they purchase and they consume based on emotion. They work together and collaborate with people they have a relationship with. So there will always be this underlying need for humans in the workplace. And you know what? If there isn't, then actually, if we can rethink society so we can all just enjoy life and not have to go to work unless we want to, then what a great position that's in. Because I think 87% of people in the world are disengaged with their work. So actually, if we create a position where people only do work that they really engage with, that's a real opportunity. So, I mean, data, the future of data is a given. Humans will still be part of the mix. Where it goes is really exciting and really challenging for all of us in the coming 10, 20 years. But yeah, I think it's this big kind of changing time we're in at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Great. And going off of that, there's a follow-up question, like considering that we still need, right, the human elements, as you just said. Like, what are the main competencies that we should develop or showcase to employers?
Completely. So if we're taking this right back at the moment and thinking you're somebody who's going to try and get in front of an employer to show them that you should go and work with them or they need you, then show them that you understand who they are. They're not just another company you've sent your resume to. Actually make them see that there's a connection there, because they need that connection. So where's the relevance? What do you appreciate about their brand or their approach? What do you do that's aligned? So how can you showcase your alignment with that brand? And actually, then how are you different? We go back to what we said before about how do you stand out in the crowd. Actually, what can you do to really understand, even on a low level, that data you've got that says, this is who this company is, this is how they work, this is what they need, this is how I match that. What can you do to showcase that? If you're going for a creative position, make your resume look good. Actually have a link to something where it's bespoke for that organization. And you know what? The really easy things. If there's a phone number on there, pick up the phone and call the person and talk to them and inquire about the position, because they'll know your name and they'll know you're interested, and they'll understand that alignment before they even see your resume. Don't just press send on the resume and then wonder why you never get a response, because they won't know really how that connection exists unless you create the connection. So to go back to the previous question of the importance of human connection, that communication, that willingness to reach out and to connect and to collaborate, I guess, will always be important, both in the workplace and also as you're trying to get in front of employers.
Great. So unfortunately, we're out of time for now, but thank you very much, Andy. I think it's actually the start of a conversation. There's so much more we could talk about.
Absolutely.
And to our students who are here, we will have another private session where you can directly ask your questions to Andy as well. So definitely stay tuned as well. And thank you again, Andy. And
thank you.